Between the early 1500s and the mid-1800s, one of the largest forced migrations in human history took place. Over 12 million African men, women, and children were taken from their homelands and transported across the Atlantic Ocean. Nearly 2 million never survived the journey. This crossing would become known as the Middle Passage, a voyage defined not by distance but by suffering. By the start of the 18th century, the transatlantic slave trade had become a vast commercial operation. European merchants built ships not for exploration or trade, but for human cargo. These vessels were engineered with chilling precision. They had extra openings cut into their sides for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and expanded compartments below deck, designed to hold as many people as possible. Profit depended on numbers. The more people a ship carried, the more money it could make. Before the journey even began, the process of dehumanization was complete. At coastal port cities in West Africa, captives were stripped of their clothing and possessions. Their heads were shaved, families were separated. The boarding process could last weeks, sometimes months, while ships waited to fill every available space. During this time, many captives lived exposed on deck in makeshift wooden enclosures built by the crew. Netting was installed around the ship, not for safety, but to prevent people from jumping into the ocean in acts of desperation. Once the ship set sail, the captives were forced below deck. There they were confined in cramped compartments, some with ceilings barely 4 or 5 feet high. They were packed tightly, often unable to stand or fully turn their bodies. Men were usually restrained and kept apart. Women and children were separated into other sections of the ship. There were no proper sanitation facilities. Heat, darkness, and poor air circulation turned the lower decks into unbearable spaces. Illness spread quickly. Diseases like dysentery, malaria, smallpox, and measles affected both captives and crew. Death became routine. Each day those who survived were brought above deck for limited periods. Even then, they were kept separated and closely guarded. A reinforced barrier, called a barricade, stood between the crew and the captives, ready to be used if resistance broke out. Some captives were forced to exercise, sometimes through movement or song, not for their well-being, but to preserve the ship's cargo. Discipline was brutal. Those who resisted or refused to eat were punished severely. Fear was used as a tool of control. Despite everything, resistance never disappeared. Acts of defiance took many forms: silent refusal, coordinated resistance, and in rare cases, open rebellion. Some women, using the limited freedom they were allowed, helped organize uprisings. Most were unsuccessful. The odds were overwhelming. For decades, much of what happened aboard these ships remained hidden. That changed in 1783. A court case involving a British slave ship called the Zong exposed the horrors of the Middle Passage to the wider public. The ship had left the African coast with more than 400 captives. After navigation errors and worsening conditions, supplies ran dangerously low. Rather than accept financial loss, the ship's captain ordered over 100 captives thrown overboard. He claimed it was a necessity. At trial, the ship's owners argued that enslaved people were legally no different from cargo. The court agreed. But the case shocked the public. Abolitionists circulated the story, removing the ship's name, to show that this was not an exception. It was the system. In the early 1800s, international pressure finally led to change. Both Great Britain and the United States outlawed the transatlantic slave trade. But slavery itself did not end. It would take decades more. In the United States, it would take another half-century and a civil war before slavery was officially abolished. The Middle Passage was not just a journey across the ocean. It was a calculated system of violence built on profit and sustained by silence. Its legacy did not end when the ship stopped sailing. It lives on in history, in memory, and in the ongoing struggle to confront the truths of the past. Because understanding what happened is the first step toward ensuring it is never repeated.